Ren from Hallowed Be Thy Game, and today I'm going to share with you my top 10 favorite games of all time. Let's check it out. First off, I just want to thank everyone for following me on this journey of my top 50 favorite games of all time. Thank you guys so much for sharing yours down in the comments. It's been so much fun, but I do want to warn you, this is my top 10 favorite games of all time. This isn't a definitive list by any means. In fact, you're going to see from my list, this is purely subjective. For me, when we get down to the nitty-gritty, what separates great games from hallowed games or games that just mean the most to me is a lot of times just how they impacted me emotionally, and that's not necessarily something that's quantifiable. So for a lot of these games on this list, this is something that just this game was there for me at the time I needed it. I mean, mechanically, I think anything in my top 15 could easily be number one in terms of just from a gameplay perspective, but these are the games that have just meant the most to me and helped me through some really hard times. So with that, let's get to number 10, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 kind of came into my life at the perfect moment in the sense that I was very much addicted to online MMOs, and this was the single player experience that I needed to put my mind to work, to immerse myself in this incredible story. I really did love the characters by the end. Rex took a long time for me to kind of grow to love. However, by the end, I love this cast of characters. There's a reason why so many people have such a visceral love for this game. It's amazing, and I know a lot of people always list the combat system as like a knock against it. Look, this combat system, yeah, it's extremely complicated. I mean, you can get some combat tutorials into this game very late. There is a lot of finesse, and if you're going to want to take on the super bosses for this game, yeah, you better buckle up. I mean, there's a lot to it, but that's what my brain needed at the time, coming off of my MMO phase of gaming. This is a combat system that really can just be used to do some crazy builds. I loved it. Really, the extreme depth to the world was just the perfect playground I needed. A lot of times I've noticed that as I'm kind of coming further away from MMOs, there is kind of an impulse to want to beat a game, experience it, and then move on. However, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 demands that you just plant your feet down and get lost in that world. And to me, this was the best $60 I ever spent. I freaking loved this. I knew from the second it came out that this was going to be a game that I was interested in, and boy oh boy did I just absolutely lose myself in it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I loved it. What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments. Number 9, Tales of Arise. This is actually the most recent video game added to my top 10 favorite games. Tales of Arise took my heart by storm last year. I knew I would enjoy this game, but when I started playing it, slowly but surely, this game entrenched me in its world. Every character I love. I love the entire cast of characters from this game. Alphen, Xion, Kisara, they are all fantastic. Immediate icons of JRPGs to me. And the combat redesign to this, now I know they did a lot of work with Berseria. I'm slated to play that this year. However, Tales of Arise's combat just swept me away. I liked Vesperia a lot, but the combat system didn't really mesh with me. The active time dodging and the battle mechanics changes to Tales of Arise is just immediately one of my favorites in the entire action RPG genre. This game is wildly fun to play. I can't wait to do a New Game Plus run of this on harder difficulties and just kind of allow that battle system to shine even more. It's flashy, it's in your face, and it's amazing. Now, I know the story isn't really breaking any storytelling boundaries. However, it's a tale of good versus evil, and I'm going to be honest, sometimes I just want that. You know, I don't need any like deep philosophical tales or we were the bad guy the whole time. You know, that's great and it has its place. However, sometimes you just want to sit down with a good book, a good video game, and you just want to feel good. And Tales of Arise is the perfect feel-good video game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Like I said, I really love the battle system. However, a lot of the other mechanics in the game were just a joy to experience, like fishing is a lot of fun in this game. Exploring the world, this game is gorgeous. It was my game of the year last year, and it immediately propelled itself into my top 10 favorite games. This is a game my wife, when I was trying to figure out my favorite games from last year, I knew Tales of Arise was probably going to be it. In my conversations with my wife, she could just see how I would glow talking about this game. It just got my adrenaline going. It made me happy, and it was a wonderful experience. I can't recommend Tales of Arise enough to anyone who is interested in action RPGs. This game really just came at a time in our lives where we were moving a lot. There was a lot going on, but this game was just this nice anchor point for me to just sit down and to play a very fun video game that had a really gripping story, but also just was feel good at the end. There are some low lows in this, but the acts of vengeance and just rising to the challenge, oh God, it just gets me going. I want to play it again right now, even talking about it. Tales of Arise, what do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments. Number 8. Dragon Quest XI. Still, of the making of this video, the best turn-based game on the Switch. Dragon Quest XI is a fairy tale brought to life. Yes, there is some really cool elements that switch up the formula that keep you invested throughout it, start to finish. However, every character in this cast is so lovable. If you've watched my top 10 favorite JRPG parties, spoiler alert, they're on there. But Dragon Quest XI just takes the fundamentals of turn-based gaming and makes them fun. The world is gorgeous. Akira Toriyama's art is mesmerizing, and Sylvando is one of the best characters in any video game. He friggin' cracks me up. He's the friend we all want and wish we had. It's a glorious game, and honestly, when this game hits you in the feels, it hits you down to the very core. This game absolutely drew a tear for me. It had me laughing till I cried at times. I mean, good lord, Sylvando's parade halfway through the game, just friggin' the top of the mountain of just feel good. This game is just excellent. It was one of those games that when I beat it, I was like, oh my god, this can't be it. Luckily, there's that post-game storyline that just, it had its hooks in me. I loved exploring the world. I was so sad when this game ended. I'm not kidding. If you are at all interested in turn-based games and you're okay with playing the fundamentals of a turn-based combat system, Dragon Quest XI is the top of the mountain. It is fantastic. I loved it with all my heart, and I cannot recommend it enough to new fans of the JRPG genre. Check it out. Number 7. Chrono Trigger. A simple still image from Chrono Trigger is enough to take me on a voyage of nostalgia that I can get lost in and don't want to come back from. Obviously, the combat system in this is extremely iconic. The tech attacks, they're fantastic. The ATB system in this is just one of the best implementations, and this is one of those games from the Super Nintendo era that you can just go back to and play even in modern day, and I don't think it's even going to be difficult for modern day gamers to play this. I mean, the DS port of this is one of the best ports ever. But Chrono Trigger to me is the purest essence of everything I want in a turn-based game. I think this could very well be a perfect video game. I think Chrono Trigger is excellence refined. It is the perfect fusion dance between the greats of gaming. The soundtrack is straight, just incredible. The artwork is immediately iconic. You show somebody an image or a character from this game, they immediately know it's Chrono Trigger. There's a magic in this game that's hard for me to identify. Is it just the art? Is it just the music? Or is it the care and passion that can almost be felt? The passion and the hard work put in by the developers, you can feel it. And when you sit down and boot up this game, it feels as if you're being transported away to this perfect, innocent time. And this is one of those games that literally, when I boot it up, it's like I'm right back there in my bedroom playing Chrono Trigger for the first time on the PlayStation. Yeah, I know. But it's excellent, and I cannot recommend to anyone, new fan or old, if you haven't played Chrono Trigger, I mean, you have to. Chrono Trigger is the top of the mountain. Let me know, what do you think of Chrono Trigger down in the comments? Number 6, Dark Souls. I mean, you knew it had to be on this list, right? Look, Dark Souls to me is the epitome of the Souls formula. Now, I know right now with Elden Ring, there's a lot of talk and a lot of love and passion to kind of see where Elden Ring has taken it, and I think Elden Ring is an incredible game. However, for me, Dark Souls will probably forever be my favorite Souls game. There's something about the clank of the armor. The level design is just mesmerizingly good. And that methodical, slow combat is just pristine. For me, Dark Souls is one of those points in gaming history where you have action RPGs that were made before Dark Souls, and then you have the ones that were made after. It really turned and shaped the genre, and honestly, it gave every mediocre games journalist something to compare a difficult game to. So hey, there you go. To me, Dark Souls is more than just difficult combat, because Dark Souls is a great place to start. Yes, these games are difficult. We all know they're hard games. If somebody says they're easy, they're probably just showboating. I don't know. But they're not impossible. They're well designed. They're well tuned. I really can't recommend them enough. I think if anyone is willing to try it, if you got a PS5, pick up Demon's Souls. It's great. I mean, Dark Souls took a lot from that slow, methodical combat, but I do think that everyone should try Dark Souls at least once. I mean that because there's really something to where once you look past the mystique and the impossible, lofty difficulty setting that's been kind of hammered into the earth by every journalist on the planet, you'll see that this is just a really good game. It's well designed, and it changed gaming forever. The first time you see Anor Londo, the first time you kind of zone into the Undead Burg, these are moments of gaming that just stay with you. I mean, when you've been out and you've fought a hard boss and you finally make your way down an elevator and you hear Firelink Shrine's music kick up, those are moments that can't really be quantified. And as much as I love Bloodborne and I love Demon's Souls and I love Elden Ring and Sekiro, those moments that Dark Souls gave to me, I don't think will ever be replicated. There's nothing quite like the first time you play Dark Souls. Number 5, Radiant Historia. As I've become a father, the way I play games and experience stories changed me. And without giving away any spoilers, the story for Radiant Historia had me in the palm of its hand and at times rendered me to nothing more than a sobbing father. It's a glorious, beautiful story. It takes the time-traveling mechanic and does it perfectly. The way the game works in its storytelling into the very fabric of the game and how you experience it is excellent. This is one of those games to where it has a unique combat system to where I personally have never played another game like it. It's turn-based grid-like format to where you can knock enemies around and work up these huge combos. It's fun. The entire time I played this game start to finish, the combat never got old. Radiant Historia has one of my favorite turn-based combat systems ever. Where this game really lands it is with its characters and its storytelling. The Perfect Chronology ported this game to the 3DS, I think is must play for any fans of JRPGs. I cannot recommend picking it up enough before their 3DS eShop closes. The bad guy from Radiant Historia hit me on such a guttural level with his reasoning and his story and why he is doing what he is doing, to where it is the epitome that a good bad guy can drive great characters. And for me, Radiant Historia has one of the best villains in all of gaming. I stand by that. I know this can seem a little odd for people, but I'm serious. If you haven't played Radiant Historia, give it a shot. I'm not just being crazy for crazy's sake. Radiant Historia is that good. It changed me, and when I sat there weeping as the credits rolled on this game, it left a profound impact on me. And I think it is absolutely one of the best video games ever made. Check it out. Number 4, Final Fantasy VI. Speaking of good bad guys and how they can make a great game even better, Kefka is absolutely one of my favorite bad guys of all time, but for very different reasons. He's hilarious for one and extremely demented, yet even as funny and goofy as he is, every time he's on screen, there is a level of unease and fear, similar to what you could maybe have with Heath Ledger's Joker from Batman. But for me, Kefka is one of those insane bad guys because of how effective he is. And for me, Final Fantasy VI is incredible. Terra's theme is one of the best musical compositions ever made in gaming. It might be my favorite video game singular soundtrack ever. I mean, that slow, iconic visual as the Magitech armor is making its way through the snowfield. Oh God, you have the opera scene, But for me, with Cyan's story, but also Edgar's story, some of the most emotionally powerful and gripping moments in gaming. When that coin is flipped by Edgar, I had tears streaming down my face. I love this game. The combat system with the Magicite is really fun, it's easy to approach, and it offers an insane level of customization. Watching speedruns for Final Fantasy VI is jaw-dropping, just the level of attention and detail and optimization you can do in this game. I love the giant cast of characters from Terra and Locke, Edgar, all the way down to the Yeti. Oh my god, I love this game, can't get enough of it. Final Fantasy VI, I think it is the best Super Nintendo game, period. But who's your favorite bad guy from Final Fantasy? Let me know down in the comments. Number 3, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. To give you a little history on me, I'm very much a homebody. I love to go on travels and stuff like that, but I love being at home. When 2017 rolled around, but my family had to move to a third world country for a period of time. I explain it in one of my other videos about Devil Survivor 1, if you're interested. However, during that time, I was extremely homesick, and my son was under a year old, and we were away from family, and it was a lot. And before we left, I was able to take The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild with me. And then during those moments of, being homesick, away from home, it was a really tough time. Exploring Hyrule with Link was the medicine my soul needed. Those moments of exploring all these nooks and crannies and going on this extreme epic tale, the absolute freedom to explore everywhere you wanted, well, I mean, that was what video game magic is all about to me. The only thing about this game that I really didn't mesh with at first was the breakable weapons and stuff like that. I think that's kind of been explained by everybody and hammered into the earth, but for me, it didn't matter. This game was glorious to play. I will always cherish the memories of the first time I would see a spectral dragon flying through the sky, or I would see a falling star hit the ground way off in the horizon, and I would run to find it. Or I would find a magical, eerie horse that was a lord of a mountain near a cherry blossom tree. There's moments of exploration and mystery, and people are still discovering even 5.5 years later. For me, Breath of the Wild will always have a special place in my heart because it was there at a time when I needed an escape the most. It is my favorite Zelda game ever made. Obviously, I'm extremely excited for Breath of the Wild 2. One of the things about this game that was so wonderful is just there's something about Zelda. I mean, I've grown up with Zelda. I'm as old as Link, essentially. It was there for me, and it felt like when I was so far away from home, it was like there was an old childhood friend that was there with me. And exploring the countryside, visiting the villages, finding all the different memories. And I mean, this version of Link is absolutely one of my favorites. He's been through a lot. Also, there is just that life that is in the world itself. And this version of Hyrule is absolutely my favorite. But this game will always have been able to be there for me in a way that few other games ever could. As this game would begin to wrap to a close and have that big final fight there on Hyrule Field, it felt like things were going to be okay. I mean, yeah, I was far away from home, but things would work out. Now, a hurricane would hit the island, and I did almost forget my Switch on the island as we were being evacuated. However, that's a story for another day. Number 2, Persona 5 Royal. Look, right at the start of the pandemic, I was able to get this game in, and it helped me through that craziness. To me, Persona 5 Royal's soundtrack is one of the best video game soundtracks ever made. There is a level of chill to this game that is just, it hits me on the foundational level. But what's so wild about this, it was my first introduction to the Persona games. Persona 5 takes you on this high school journey, but not only that, it has levels of severe intensity. That first palace with Kamoshida, sweet God in heaven, that was almost too stressful at times. And this game covers extremely dark topics. Now that I've played, a ton of the Persona games since, Persona 5 through 2, and I've played the SMT series as well. Persona 5, I felt like was a pretty good mesh between the fun, quirky Persona 4 formula and the very dire, dark elements that you would see in like Persona 3 or 2. Overall, obviously, it's not as dark as those games, but for me, it was just that level of intensity that I just could not shake. From the very very outset of this game to finishing out the final palace of the Royal Dungeon, I was hooked. Hooked so hard, in fact, that as soon as I beat it, I started another New Game Plus run of the game. Oh my god. I love them all. It's incredible. The Phantom Thieves are absolutely one of my favorite parties in all of JRPGs. Makoto is best girl. Sorry everyone, but she is. Just that introduction to the press turn battle system. My Neanderthal level combat formula brain just blew up playing it. I just could not get enough. I was able to learn the ins and outs to where when I would start to work my way backwards and come across the harder games and then obviously get to the Godfather level of difficulty that can be the SMT games, I could not get enough. And I owe it all to Persona 5 to put me on that path. The story is excellent. The character development, I love it. Can't get enough of it, and I can't recommend it enough to anyone who's the least bit interested in turn-based games. Persona 5, even people who aren't fans of turn-based games, love this game because it has style. One of the best UIs in all video games. I can't recommend it enough. Check it out. Now, before I get to number 1, I do want to share with you a little bit of reasoning as to why this game is so cemented for me as number 1, and to kind of give some explanation as to why it's set up this way. I have 2 younger brothers, one of which unfortunately has passed on in about 13 years ago. Definitely a story for another day. However, when we were growing up, we played this game together. And when I think back to my purest and happiest of memories of gaming, it was me and my 2 brothers sitting down in front of our old CRT with our PlayStation and playing Final Fantasy VII. Those moments of experiencing a JRPG for the first time. This was the first turn-based game we had ever played. Yeah, it blew our minds. And I know for a lot of people, it is tough to understand why there is such a visceral love people can have for Final Fantasy VII. But if it were not for Final Fantasy VII, there would be no YouTube channel for me. There would be no JRPG channel centered games for me. Final Fantasy VII and its characters introduced us to a whole entire world. For us, games were something that if they took you longer than 15 hours to beat, that was mind-blowing. Well, this was like the first 50-plus hour game or 30-plus hour game we had ever played. I mean, it was unimaginably incredible for us. We grew so attached to Cloud and Tifa and Barret to where, you know, they were a part of like who we are. It was just a part of the edgelord we were back then. And it honestly governed a lot of the games we would eventually grow to love and like. And even though my brothers would eventually go on to play other games, me and unfortunately my brother who's gone on, we still love turn-based games. It got us into Final Fantasy. It got us into these games that I still play today. And for me, Final Fantasy VII brings those memories back in such a powerful way. Well, when Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and yes, I am lumping it in here to number 1 for me, when I started to play it, I had just lost a loved one to COVID. It was a very difficult time. And for, weeks, I couldn't bring myself to play games or do anything. It was such an extremely difficult time. When I did sit down to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, that feeling of sitting down in front of the TV, it was at night when everybody had gone to bed. It was like my brothers had sat down beside me, and in that magic came back to life again. Yes, the combat system is different, everything. I get it. People get really upset, and I understand, but I can't explain the amount of feelings this game brought back, and they were perfect. And honestly, Final Fantasy VII Remake affected me in such a way to where, for what I couldn't even imagine possible, it felt like I was able to sit there and kind of experience nostalgia again with my brother and him. It felt like we were playing the game together again. And that magic can't just be generated from nothing. No game can do that. Obviously, there was probably better, technical games that came out the same year as Final Fantasy VII Remake. To me, it's not just a technical thing. I think the combat is amazing. I thought it was a blast. I thought it was a really nice switch up to it, and I think it is definitely a very viable way to do a remake. And obviously, I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but remake is definitely a deceptive thing to say about the game, but that magic was there. And the way the characters spoke and the dialogue and the character building, that was Cloud. That was the Cloud I played in Final Fantasy VII Remake. That was the Cloud that me and my brothers experienced back in the 90s. That Tifa was the same Tifa, Barret. And you can't just wing that and it happened. And the care and the passion that went into creating that experience from the developers, it was a magic to me that brought it all back. You know, as you kind of go on and you heal through these difficult times, I mean, yeah, that was a part of the process, and I owe a lot to that. I will forever love Final Fantasy VII because it holds such a place in my gamer DNA to where it's a part of who I am now. Now, I do want to state the music in the remake is stellar. I love the materia system and the changes, the slight changes and tweaks they did to modernize it. The combat system, I loved it. I thought the visuals were spectacular. Obviously, the level design was a little bit, linear, but hey, that part of the game was too. I'm very stoked for the sequel and all that. However, the magic I felt in that and the magic I felt in the original release, yeah, favorite games of all time. Those are just my top 10 favorite games of all time. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments. Obviously, this is a personal list. The odds of any of you having the same list of mine are next to none. So hey, let's just experience and love and share our love for games together. So let me know yours down in the comments. Thank you all so much for joining me on this wonderful voyage of going through my top 50 favorite games of all time. Thank you so much. It's been an awesome honor to be able to nerd out with you all online on YouTube. So thank you so much for liking and subscribing, and I will see you all next time.